Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining me again today. I am Garen J. Richardson. I am the Secondary English Language Arts Instructional Specialist for Richmond Public Schools, and we're going to continue our middle school English session today. Remember, you'll need paper and something to write with. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. So yesterday we reviewed middle school English, building bridges for English language arts success. And our objective for the week, we stated if you are in the sixth grade, it's 6.5. If you are in the seventh grade, it's 7.5. And if you are in the eighth grade, it's 8.5. Take one moment and find the standard of learning objective that reflects your grade and read it for me. Okay, today's lesson, we are going to analyze how sentences, chapters, or scenes fit into the overall structure of a text and contribute to the development of the theme. Yesterday, we reviewed characters, people or animals who are important to the story. We reviewed setting, when and where the story takes place, the plot, what happens in a story, the theme, which is the lesson or message the author wants the reader to learn. We also reviewed the elements of a plot in the narrative structure. And I want you to look over this slide and review the information because we did review it yesterday. And as you do that, I'm going to give you some time. I want you to keep in mind that as you continue to read more and more, you will encounter authors using story elements in intricate ways. So it's important that you analyze how characters, words, and actions drive plot elements and analyze how events or rising action build the suspense and interest as you're reading. I also want you to pay close attention to the climax when you're reading because that's the turning point and it often leads to the resolution or the end of the story. But most importantly, you will need to begin to see how characters, the setting, and the plot relate to the main idea and the theme of the story. Because remember, we're working on theme a lot this week. So I'm going to get out of here for a second and go to an actual reading excerpt. I'll try to make this a little bigger for you. This is an excerpt from Tracker, and I want you to read the first two paragraphs independently, and then together we will read paragraphs 3 through 5. So you go ahead and read those two paragraphs now. Okay, so I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to read paragraph 1 and 2, and we're going to go down to 3, 4, and 5. And I want you to read with me. He knelt next to the bed and felt the grass, and it was still warm. That had been the sound. A deer had been here in its storm bed, and he had walked past it, and it had jumped up, apparently hitting the willow on the way. It must have surprised the deer, his coming, because the first tracks were more than 10 feet from the bed. The deer had bounded up and away. The next tracks were 20 feet from the first ones, out into the clearing and across, craters in the new snow where the deer had run. Well, he thought, I was close to one anyway, even if I didn't know it. It came to him suddenly that he hadn't thought about his grandfather for nearly an hour, and he didn't know if that was good or if that was bad. So the first 2 paragraphs that you all read gave a lot of information. But what we didn't talk about was this top portion right here, and I didn't want to read it until after. So I'm going to read it now. John Bourne always hunts with his grandfather, but this year his grandfather is dying of cancer. John can think of little else. As he goes looking for a deer alone, he hears a noise. So this intro part right here tells us a lot about the excerpt that we're going to read. And so you all got a lot of information in the first 2 paragraphs. You got a lot of information about the setting, and you got a lot of information about perhaps a conflict. We do know that he has a problem. His grandfather is ill and he can't hunt with him. So we already know that there's some type of problem from the introduction. So what I want you to do is we're going to go back to this document, and I'm going to project these questions. These questions talk about the excerpt that we just read, Tracker, and what we read yesterday, the moose encounter. Number 1 says, how does a moose encounter and the excerpt from Tracker relate to the theme of wilderness adventure? Because the excerpt of what we read yesterday from a moose encounter dealt with wilderness, and so does Tracker. So there is some theme there. What is the connection? How does it relate to one another? Number 2, which adventure did you read and find most exciting? A moose encounter or the excerpt from Tracker? 3, between a moose encounter and the excerpt from Tracker, which character faced the most challenging situation? Remember, there was a problem or a challenge yesterday, and then there's one today. Which one faced the most challenging situation, in your opinion? 4, after reading the excerpt from Tracker, why can't John stop thinking about his grandfather? We were told something about the grandfather in the introduction, but after you read those 5 paragraphs, try to answer that question for me. Number 5, what is the main conflict in Tracker? And lastly, what is the theme of Tracker, and what details convey the theme? So I want you to answer these questions based on these 2 readings that we've had yesterday and today. Jot those answers down on that piece of paper that I told you about having at the beginning of this session. And what we're going to do is we're going to review those answers, and I'm going to provide you feedback for those answers later on this week. So go ahead and do that for me. And I'm going to pause this, giving you time to answer those questions. I don't want this to be a timed assignment. You just do it, and we'll get back together tomorrow. So we've reviewed what we went over yesterday. We reviewed plot structure and narrative structure. We reviewed the elements of a narrative and theme. We went over 2 reading excerpts, one yesterday and one today, and I left you with a brief response activity. I want you to do that, and then we'll see each other again tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me today. You all take care, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.